Hello and welcome to today's 10-minute episode of The Listening Lounge. My name is Nick Day, CEO of JGA Recruitment Group, specialist payroll and HR recruiters.
Now today I'm joined by Eisha Karol, who is founder of PronounceMe, an Oxford University innovation business that began once as a scribble on the back of an envelope in an Italian classroom and has now become a startup at Oxford University Innovation, working across several industries with delegates from 11 language backgrounds. Now, PronounceMe is now an award-winning business, providing highly tailored levels of pronunciation training and more to address every aspect of language learning, particularly within the corporate environment. Tell me why a faster way to clear communication, if for want of a better way of putting it, is really important for business performance. How are we relating language to performance within business?
Well, especially now that, so many people are meeting online remotely on Zoom or Teams, we need to be comprehensible, and we don't have the advantage of body language, and a lot of the context within which we communicate normally is removed. And especially if you're making a presentation and you have to get important information across, it's really important to make your points clearly and to be understood. So on the one hand, we have the difficulty that a speaker of another language might have in communicating clearly. And now we have an added layer, which is a slight context of not wanting to seem discriminatory by pointing out that you don't understand something somebody has said, or you don't want to be rude. And misunderstandings in a business context can obviously be very serious. That could scupper a deal or, lead to some sort of misunderstanding further down the line. And also, it has an impact on the confidence of people in their workplace. And the people that I've trained, who are usually very high flyers in their industry, middle management, often find that this skill has been overlooked because their competencies in their work are so high that the fact that their English isn't completely clear hasn't really been addressed. And probably when they were hired, someone saw that they had their IELTS certification or something like that, and they ticked the box. So this is really about filling a gap that otherwise could have consequences for business.
No, I think you put that really good. And that's why also it's so important then for HR professionals to really get to grips with this, as you say, overlooked area of inclusion, how it impacts diversity, which is really, really important. And we're talking lots of conversation at the minute about diversity and inclusion. But I do think this is an area that perhaps, as you say, is overlooked, that perhaps isn't being talked about as much as maybe it should be. Tell me a little bit more about how PronounceMe's training is different from conventional language training as we may understand it. The one I'm most familiar with is the International English Language Testing System. I have a sister-in-law that used to teach that. I think it's known as the IELTS. But how is it different? What should we come to expect?
Well, PronounceMe's training is very focused on the needs of the individual, and we actually do research into the sounds in the individual's native language and create a bridge between those sounds and the sounds in English. And that involves not only explaining to them intellectually which sounds they need to master, but also actually showing them the tongue and mouth position, helping them to find it and imprint it so that they can, bring that change forward in their future communication. So the training that a French speaker gets is going to be very different from the training that a speaker of Indian languages or even Spanish would get, because the sounds in French are different to the sounds in Indian languages or the sounds in Spanish or Italian. So it's very tailored to the needs of the individual. We also look at how the client is using language in their workplace. And as you know, certain industries have vocabulary that's very specific to that industry. So we try and sort out any pronunciation issues there may be with their work vocabulary in finance or whichever industry they're in. And then we work on their presentation skills as well to make sure they're really confident delivering a powerful presentation that gets the points across.
Fantastic. So can you give me any examples of maybe some of the presentation work you've been doing, the level that you've been supporting, the kind of presentation even that they're delivering? Are there any sort of working examples or anecdotes?
Well, I've been working a lot with people in finance and engineering, and finance has very technical language and a lot of consonants. And in English, the consonants are quite well articulated and they're quite hard. And when we use word stress, even though, the stress really falls on the vowels, we kind of use the consonant to give it a bit more energy, you could say. And there are some languages such as French where the consonants are really quite soft, and this is why these languages sound so gorgeous when they're sung. But in a workplace where you need to use very technical language, you need to be a bit more muscular with the articulation. So that's something that I've been working on with my French clients, for instance.
Yeah, it's a really interesting example. And for someone who, unfortunately, my language skills are very, very poor, I'll confess. My wife speaks Spanish and French. I'm not great with either language. But is there an example of the kind of the tongue position you were talking about, or could you give me if we were to role play it, maybe where an example of where this training may come into play?
You've put me on the spot.
I can be your willing victim if you like. I don't mind.
Well, if you were French, you would probably not say the. You would probably say the. So you would say, we are talking about the sing and you can get lost in a sea of kind of the sounds if you're not careful, especially with French. The intonation tends to go up at the end of phrases, and they often speak very fast. So with a French speaker, I have to get them to sort of break that down a bit, put in more pauses, try and get the tip of the tongue between the teeth, which is not easy for them because it doesn't feel normal. And actually, as you asked for an anecdote, once I had a Polish student, and she said she felt that she was sticking her tongue out at people if she put her tongue in the right position. And I said, no, that is actually how British people speak. And if you want to make the sound correctly, you've got to do it.
Sure.
So sometimes people have a preconception that comes from not only their own language, but their own culture. And sometimes we have to sort of work through those a little bit.
And it is important if you're delivering, as you say, you're working with some senior managers in financial sectors and senior markets. If you're going to deliver an important presentation, it's important that, I guess, the way that we deliver those words can carry huge weight and huge importance. So I can totally understand why it's an essential aspect that we should be considering in the way that we're delivering some of this work, because the way we communicate leads to better performance, better understanding, better acceptance and inclusivity as well. So I think it's really important. I think that's a really good anecdote as well to use in that regard. Now you mentioned, or I mentioned in the introduction for my research, that this all came from initially, scribbling in Italy on the back of a paper, and you developed it now into a wonderful business. How have you gone about developing the training program to where it is now? What's been your methodology and your process?
Well, a lot of it I've developed on the job. What happened in Italy is I had a temporary teaching job in a school, and I was seeing a lot of classes and they were all making the same mistakes in English. So I got very interested in why that was, and did some research into the language background. And I also started using different elements of my own background. I have a theatre background and a music background, and I think you do too, Nick, so you'll understand this.
I'm loving your background, by the way, just in this. For those that are on audio, they won't see it, but if you're watching this visually on YouTube or something else, we've both got musical instruments as our backdrop. So I was very excited when I saw you join the call today.
Yeah, it's a bit of a historical guitar clash going on, but quite relevant, I think, talking about the development of musical instruments and the development of language. So to go back to Italy, and they were children, so I had the luxury of being able to play with them and get them to do things. So we were, introducing elements of theatre and getting them to find ways to make the sound. And I realised that I had something, so I took it to the SAI Business School at Oxford and went through an incubator process. And then I was out in the corporate world with my programs that I'd researched for different language backgrounds, and seeing how far I could push these corporate guys in suits. And it's been a really fun process. I mean, sometimes we do, more intellectual, linguistic based work. And sometimes I get them to sing Madonna songs because they can't find a certain sound, and it helps them to isolate the sound. And sometimes it's easier to sing because we let go of our inhibitions and
Sure.
We can just sort of play. So I'm really trying to keep that element of play in the work, especially for people that are sitting behind a desk all day. And I used to be a corporate trainer, actually. In my acting days, I used to do role play training in the corporate world. So I'm quite used to that idea of bringing play into the corporate world, and I think it's really effective.
Was that the driver for you going into the corporate world with this program? Because obviously the program doesn't necessarily, you could have taken a different direction. You've been very much focused on delivering this to corporates and improving corporate communications. What was it that led you to that motivation to focus on the corporate world and senior leaders in particular in improving this area of communication?
Well, it was partly that they wanted the work and the demand for it was there. But I think also, corporations, businesses have to use innovation in their work. And so they sort of understand a good innovation when they see one. And, and they often do hire trainers to come in and deliver team exercises and all sorts of things. So it was a good place to sort of get that developed. And I've also been very lucky that I was given the flexibility to tailor the training to the needs of the individual clients. And that's really helped making it relevant to the workplace.
Fantastic having you on the show. Thank you so much for opening my mind to the world of language. I feel like I really should get better at learning other languages myself. My wife is brilliant and I'm really very poor. So I'm going to try and make a mental note to make more effort going forward. But it's been an absolute privilege having you on the show. Just leaves me to say a thank you once again to Eisha Karol for joining me today. And I look forward to bringing you the next episode real soon. Thank you, Eisha.